Hi and welcome everybody. My name is Amy Bryant of Wild Child Counseling in Atlanta, Georgia. And I also have an online international community on Facebook called Parenting Beyond Punishment. And I am here today with Shonnie Lavender, who I love having conversations with. We've had some really lovely ones over the years. So welcome, Shonnie. I'll ask you
Thank
to
you.
introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Amy. I'm so glad to be here. I do always love the opportunity to connect with you and connect with other people who are on this journey of parenthood in a conscious, peaceful way. I am a parent coach. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. I am also currently studying to be a clinical mental health counselor, working with children and families. So yeah, expanding my horizons. And yeah, it feels really, really good to be here today. I do have a Facebook community as well. For anybody who's not currently a member, I invite you to check it out. It's called the Conscious Moms Circle. It's also international, and so it's a great place for support. And yeah, I'm really excited. So I look forward to connecting with those of you who are on the call with us live or on the Zoom with us live. And yeah, that's what I have to say for myself this morning, Amy.
Wonderful. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. When we were preparing for today, we were talking about sort of that the evolution of parenting stages, and how for so long we have talked about parenting little kids, and how there's this sort of desert of information around sort of the preteen teenager years. And so we're just really excited to come and really start to talk about this and open up the conversation. Um, and I love, Shonnie, if you want to, I'm going to put you on the spot. Um, if
Go for it.
you had some really lovely hopes for what parents who are here or listening to the recording might walk away with, then maybe that's a good place to start.
Sure. First, I want to say wherever you are and however you're coming into this live or recording conversation is perfect. So that's part of what I want, is for parents to have a little more ease, because we all know that it is really challenging in any day and time to be a parent, and especially for these last 2 years, parenting on overdrive and lots of things. Like a lot of people, teachers were learning new skills and things like that. I think as parents, we also have been in that place. So wanting you all who are joining us to be leaving with some ease, even if it's just a little bit easier. Also to have some excitement for the teen years. What I normally hear out in the circles that I'm with is a lot of dread, heaviness, fear, worry. So hopefully a little bit, again, a shift in the direction of some excitement, like, yeah, teens, that sounds fun, or at least a little bit of it sounds fun. And then the final thing is, if you don't already feel some confidence in yourself and your kids, that you will have some of that fostered today as well, that there will be that sense of like, I don't have all the answers. Amy and Shonnie don't have all the answers, and I can do it. I can keep going, even if sometimes I'm a little scared or not feeling the excitement or the ease, that I feel confident in myself and my children or my child. So those were some of the hopefully takeaways from today, and you all can let us know how that's going for you out there as you watch and listen and connect.
Yes. And running the gamut of all those feelings is just sort of, and experiences is just a part of it, that neck deep into it. Yeah, it's just a part of it. So another thing we talked about is how sort of that shift into pre-adolescence and adolescence, so much of those early years we spend making decisions for our children, sort of in what we see as the best interest of our children and what we want for them, in this moment, in the next week or month or years. And shifting into this space of pre-adolescence and adolescence is, how do we begin to step back some you know, as we scaffold their skills and knowledge and what's going on developmentally for them, how do we begin to step back and include them in the decision and partner with them, and maybe sometimes withhold some things we might want to say, or withhold a little bit of that decision making that we might feel compelled to make for them. And this can feel tricky and scary and confusing and dangerous. And it's such an important piece for them as they move towards more autonomy, and as they move, whether they move out of the house and head to college or another job, or you know, living with friends. How can we begin to help them build on that autonomy in a way that that keeps the relationship we have with them intact, that helps them feel supported, that helps them build those decision-making skills, which are tricky, right? I'm still learning how to make good, good decisions myself. And so it's always this, this place of self-reflection and relationship reflection, and what does my kid need? What do my kids need? And what's going on for me? So.
I love what you said, Amy, the vision of the scaffolding for me. And feel free as you're listening, especially for those of you live, obviously you're the ones who are going to be interacting. If you hear something that resonates with you, feel free to pop it in the chat, whether it's a word, an emotion word, or use a little reaction. Maybe it's a thumbs up or, crying face, whatever it is. Let us know, because we do want to have this to be interactive. To me, though, that idea of going back to the scaffolding, I am, for those of you who have had any interaction with me, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so perfection and control freak, sometimes like they're the same thing, right? And so I tend to sometimes view those acts in those early years, like Amy said, like, oh, I have this best interest. I have this vision for my child, a certain type of relationship to the planet, relationship to other people, so like I have all these ideas. And on the one hand, it's wonderful when my child was little, because it was like, oh, look, I get to make this decision. And I could see it as not controlling, because there was not much feedback from them, right? Like, oh, we're eating, organic this, yay. Or, we're going to see grandma and grandpa, it was fine. But as Amy's saying, I love that idea that that scaffolding comes in so that I'm actually stepping back, I'm stepping to the side of the stage, and that can feel really challenging. It certainly, as recovering perfectionist control freak, has been challenging for me. And so I'm wondering, for any of you, if you want to give us a thumbs up, do you have that sense of, yeah, it's hard to trust and let go of some control and turn over more decisions to your kiddos? And again, it depends on the ages that you're at. So I see some thumbs up. Yeah.
And a nice span of ages, we really start thinking about this when our kids are 9, 11, 15. And we have parents here with kids who are 19 and 21 too. And it really, when we think about sort of rethinking parenting conflict, it can be helpful to get curious about what that conflict is about. What is creating that conflict? And not in a way that like it's my fault or my teen's fault, but what's going on relationally? What's going on, what is my child's need? My child's need, my teen's need, still my child. And then also what is my own need? What's going on in me that's impacting sort of this conflict? And so I really think that that piece when the conflict is showing up is, okay, I need to pause first before I keep going, before I keep pushing. It can be really helpful to take a pause and get really curious. Again, not to judge or blame or shame or right or wrong anything, but just to say, okay, something's going on. You know, my teen is pushing back, or maybe I'm pushing against my teen. Both of those happen, and for sometimes for reasons that we're able to see. And so if we begin to pivot from, well, I'm going to push through, I'm the parent, I'm going to make this decision, and instead begin to pivot to really, from making decisions to really trusting them and partnering with them, that's really what that pause is meant to help us with. Okay, hold on, something's going on.
I'd love to say a little bit more, if I can, Amy, about conflict, because I don't know about those of you watching. When I hear that word, I have a definition, I have an image of what that looks like. And I think there can also be, at least in my own experience and parents I work with, there are some inner things that many of them experience of, quote, conflict. So it might be, it's different for everybody, but maybe noticing that I'm feeling a lot more, or I'm noticing I'm having a lot more frequent judgment of my child, my teen. So like that might be a shift in how, like, when they were little, maybe they were always like, oh, I love them, 99% of the time. And if you notice, like, oh, I'm not thinking as kindly about them, or I'm noticing that I'm talking to them in a more directive way. I'm giving them more, do this, or this is your list of things, and I don't connect first. So it can really run the gamut. And I think that's really important to recognize. So conflict is not always, in my mind, is not always going to look like, oh, I'm yelling at my teen, or they're rolling their eyes at me. That's one version, right? But there are other things that might signal we're feeling some conflict or some disconnection. So I wanted to put that in there as well.
I love that piece. It really is sometimes an internal conflict too. Certainly I've had those moments where I go, like, I'm really feeling pulled back, and disengaged or disconnected. And there is that tendency to want to be like, why am I doing this? And then I go, oh, well, I have a need, or I have a worry or a fear. So yeah, sometimes it is an internal conflict, and sometimes it's definitely really clear outwardly too.
Sometimes we wish it was internal. It's all external. Oh no, And then there's one other thing that I wanted to put a frame around for us as we're starting into this conversation that Amy, you and I spoke about when we were doing some planning, is the cultural frames that we have often are centered on conflict. Parent-teen years, it's going to be stressful, it's going to be hard. And I'm doing that in that deep voice because it's that drama. It's not a comedy, it's a drama. And there's memes about it, but I find they're usually snarky, and they're usually more making fun of our over dramatic teens and all those things. And so even if we don't have those same views personally, when that's the water that we swim in, it's, I think, really easy for us to absorb then, like, oh, I should expect that my teen is going to want to rebel. And so we have these images that, if you look from a psychological standpoint, really what our children are going through is this developmental progression to move from childhood into adulthood, which adulthood, as we're knowing now, right, as far as brains, is late 20s, 26, 27. And as a 50-year-old, I'm thinking maybe adulthood starts in my 60s. I don't, but like, so adulthood is later than we used to think it was, first of all. But it really is this perfect developmental experience that our growing humans are supposed to go through. And if we frame it that way, I think it doesn't mean we won't feel stressed or we won't feel anxious or irritated or resentful, whatever our emotions are. I think it does, though, make it easier for us to have some space around it and say, oh, yeah, this is actually what's meant to happen. They're on a pathway to adulthood. And it's not always easy, but it's not because they're rebelling or we're trying to, they're trying to push us away in that kind of dramatic fashion. Yes, they are individuating. They are becoming their own person.
So, and there's so much that goes on in the teen years. We think about their brains are exploding again, and they're also pruning stuff in their brains, and their hormones are exploding, and their responsibilities are exploding. The expectations put on them are unfortunately exploding too. Not that we shouldn't have expectations, but that they really should be developmentally appropriate and appropriate for each individual person. And that can be really complicated, and it can show up in a myriad of ways for our teens. But I love to rewrite that script in our heads, and you might have to rewrite it a few times. I go back and rewrite it in my head often, that they're having a hard time. They're not purposely giving us a hard time. They're going, my brain's freaking out, my body is freaking out, I need help. And it doesn't always feel good the way they tell us, but they're still developing those skills, and they're still trying to understand what's going on themselves.
I'm wondering, Amy, one of the things we talked about inviting folks to share with us, if you want, always optional, is what emotion, when you think about the teen years, if you're not in them yet, or if you're in them with your kiddos, what emotions maybe are the top one or two that come up for you when you think about teenagers or parenting a teen? And thanks we see what you're putting in the chat. So thank you very much. We definitely we'll check in with chat periodically. So thanks, Catherine.
Yeah. We were talking about there are so many thoughts and feelings that we might have about the impending teen years.
And we pull up this one comment. I love this comment. So I remember learning in their personality development, they have to differentiate from parents. So they may do this by being very critical of parents. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, most of us are like, well, we're great. Why don't they want to be like us and think our same things and have our same viewpoints, right? So that can be, if you just take it from a really personal standpoint, most people have a hard time when people don't like their ideas or say, oh, you're stupid. So it's not just with teens, right? It's like we're vulnerable. We're human beings too, and we get vulnerable to that as well. So yeah, great point.
And we might also have that thought, well, you just don't know how good you have it. Right? Like, well, you're critiquing me because you don't know what it's like in other homes, right? And that can be like when I have either a sensation in my body of tightness or tenseness, that can be a signal to me that okay, I'm responding to something that may just be a thought or a feeling, but might not be the truth, and is worth pausing and examining. Yes, and so someone wrote too, I'm so worried about the teen years. I love them so much, but they have to have their own experiences, and it can be really scary to think that suffering is kind of a part of life, and we can be there with them in the suffering, but we can't always prevent it. And trying to prevent it can cause more problems than not. Not that we would let them go do dangerous things necessarily. I mean, there are some things that we can try to influence them on, but it definitely can be scary thinking about how they're going to have a lot of experiences that we're not a part of.
Yeah. That brings me to this idea, Amy, that two things. Something you said earlier, you were talking about teens and their experience, and I got that idea of conflict in my mind. I also think it's important to remember that within our teens, also, they have experience of inner conflict, right? So part of them at times, man, I just want my parents to take care of me. I want them to feed me and clip it, so like they like that, right? And then another part of them wants to be like, I can prove that I can do it, that I don't need anybody. So I think it's almost like if we were to draw it, it's not just two people. Like if we take ourselves and one of our teens, right? So technically two people, and we think, oh, that's two people interacting. Well, not so much, right, Amy? So there's at least parts of us, right? So we may have our own teen still living in us. Like, what was our teen experience? What were the interactions we had with our parents? So part of our teen self may be in there to sometimes get activated or sort of woken up by when we see our teen behaving or making choices. And so then we've got a teen in us. So now we've got two people over on our side, right? Our adult self and our teen self. And then we have our teen who maybe is wanting to be accepted by a certain peer group at school or in the community, and the teen that still feels really connected to family. So now you've got four people interacting, right? So it really can be very complex. And I say that because I think that also can help to pause and say, oh, yeah, who am I right now? Where am I coming from? Which part of me is this activating? Maybe we're yearning for, we want to say yes to them doing something semi-risky because we didn't get to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of us want, and then the other part is our parent part, and we're like, no, you can't do that. So it can get really complex. And so, Amy, your advice of the pause, not easy, but really straightforward, like checking in with oneself.
I hear from a lot of parents, and I also have this experience of when I pause, I can often see that it's a place of fear. Like, but I know this isn't going to turn out right. Can't they just learn from my experience? I can tell you that when I was a teenager, I could not learn from my parents' experience. And at 49, I still kind of have a hard time learning from other people's experience. But that pause when I go, okay, I'm coming at this from maybe some wisdom, but also some fear. And if I pause, I might be able to get up that bird's eye view and see how much danger is there really? Where can I begin to unpack some of this fear and then move towards my teen and say, okay, so I have some concerns. These are what they are. They're fear-based concerns. It doesn't invalidate them, but it's worth looking at, right? And so then it gives me an opportunity when my teen is in the space for it to have a conversation and to collaborate with her and say, okay, these are my fears. I just want to put them on the table in case they're helpful in making this decision. Can I walk to the store? Well, yes, you can. But, at certain ages, we have to go, can they? And then at some point, we do let them do these things. And it's that place of fear of figuring out, well, what skills do they have? If they don't have that skill, oh, let's practice walking to the store together. This was like when she was 9. Let's practice, and I observe and see what she can and can't do. Is she looking? Is she saying far enough away from the cars, right? But it's that scaffolding of skills. So can they go to a movie with friends? Can they drive their friends someplace? There is an element of danger. It's not that there's not, but they're going to be facing elements of danger when they are on their own. And so how do we scaffold those thinking skills, those pause skills, those, I don't know what to do, let me call my mom or dad whenever it's something really big. Do they feel safe calling us? You know, those relational skills.
And as you were describing that, Amy, what I was also thinking about, I don't know how many of you had the experience of during your own growing up years, both childhood and teenhood, where the adult was definitely more in that authoritarian role, right? So this is what's going to happen. There wasn't a lot or any conversation about it or the parents' reasoning. And I love what you're describing, Amy, because it is, and I think it's really hard because it requires vulnerability. You know, many of our parents did not, and no judgment on them, it just, that's not what they learned. It's not what was known. So it came across as very, here's what's coming down the pike. Here's just what you have to learn to deal with. And right, that's the world, right? If you have a boss, a boss isn't always going to let you decide things. But in our homes, we do have that opportunity to say, maybe I want to do it a little bit differently, like you're describing, Amy. And it might require me to say, you know, show the man or woman behind the curtain, right? As in the Wizard of Oz, like, I don't know, I'm an adult, but that doesn't mean I know. And that also, actually, I will say, is a key for teens, to let on that you have no freaking clue is valuable, because they see through us. They really get into that stage of like seeing adults as very hypocritical. And so if we can be like, you know, I don't know, I'm learning, I'm trying. And right now, like Amy, you described, I'm noticing I'm having a lot of fears come up for me. It's harder to have that conversation. Part of us probably does want to just say, here's no, you can't do it, and here's why. So yeah, so that's that vulnerability is something that probably many of us are learning as we parent. So,
Yeah.
and I see a question came into the chat, so we will definitely answer things and respond to things. So as you have them, please pop them in there, so we can respond. We want to hear from you. Thanks, Bev.
Language. So Bev is asking about language. She says, I'm currently needing language around stuff that even I am not prepared for. And I would love to hear, Shonnie, what you do when you're like, your kid goes, pop something in and go, and you're like, oh dear. I mean, sometimes
pretend like I'm deaf. That's my first strategy. I'm 50, so I'll be like, what? No, not really. But humor is good. Sometimes, so depending, that's a great question. In some situations, if I am in tune with myself, which some days I do really, really well, and some days I'm like, no, not there. I may say, I love to use the current language. So I'll be like, I don't have the bandwidth to have this conversation right now. And that might cover a lot of bases for me. It might mean like, I don't even really understand what you're talking about or what you're asking of me. I might, you know, really be focused over on this thing that's happening in my adult world that day. So I don't put it off forever. I just say, you know, this is not something I'm willing and able to do right now. So I use that as a pause / buffer for myself. I love, and I got this from Lori Petro, who I know you had another webinar with earlier this week, Amy. Tell me more. Those 3 words. So again, sometimes it's like, what? Because kids often, again, they're getting stuff and they're seeing stuff, they're being exposed. And I'll be like, my kiddo one time mentioned twerking, and I was like, okay, I'm not even sure I still know exactly what that is, but I did have some ideas, but are my ideas the same as theirs? So it was like, so tell me more about twerking, you know, or what, like, so I think being curious. So rather than thinking again, oh, as an adult, my job is to have answers. I think that's a paradigm that many of us came from. So like, let the kids tell you more. So sometimes that can also be, I don't know if that's addressing exactly what you're talking about, Bev, but a way to gather some more information, give oneself a pause so that we can come back to having a different kind of conversation. So let us know if that's speaking to what you're wanting or if you need some more input. Oh, it
Yeah.
looks like you are. Great.
You know, what's interesting too is there are times when, because I'm a talker, and so there are times when I'll launch into an answer and then I'll go, okay, wait, like sort of, I'll pause and go, I noticed that I've talked myself into a corner and I don't really know where to go from here. And I try just to like be open, like, you know, I feel like there's more to this conversation. And then I might just go, I probably need more information from you, right? So if you find that you've gone down the road and then you stop yourself, that's okay too. Like we can pause at any time and go, I do the bandwidth thing all the time because I am often low on bandwidth and I need time to like pull myself back into the relationship and the conversation.
And before we respond to what Bev wrote, I want to respond to what you just said, Amy. The other thing I think is really valuable for us as parents is I believe that part of conscious parenting is less about getting things quote unquote right, as if we knew what that was, right? And more about modeling humanity in all its perfect imperfectness. So having those conversations, like when Amy starts, or I definitely do that, Amy. So like, you know, I've started blah, 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 and then, oh, oops. So then it's like our kids, that they remember like, oh yeah, my parent is a bit of a doofus, you know, and but then in a good way, like they see us and go, yeah, they goof it up too. So that gives them permission. And it also models for them. So as they are learning, how do I language, like you're talking about, Bev, how do I put into words what I want to say to my peers, what I want to say to a teacher at school? Then they have our like, oh, wait, sorry, teacher, I need a pause. What I meant to say was, you know, or I need to ask you a question, you know, so it's that to me is part of the crux of these teen years, is being willing to just do over and model and know that we're going to sometimes model not what we wanted to model.
Totally.
And that's okay.
And you can just own that. And, you know, that authenticity piece is what kids are going to, kids of all ages really respond to it. Even if they might get snarky with us when they're, you know, whatever, rolling their eyes or getting frustrated because we're not getting it right. But, you know, they can have their feelings and we can still be imperfect. So she wrote, what I'm finding in the school my daughter goes to, it almost seems like it's cool to self-harm. And then she wrote, if the child isn't able to identify with a gender, there's some shaming by peers. Bev, maybe you could write a little more about that, because what I'm not sure is if those are two separate things going on. I will speak to the cool factor of self-harm. I think one of the pieces is that kids these days are under a lot more pressure, or they're under a lot of pressure. You know, we know that they are pushing academic learning earlier and earlier. You know, studies show over and over again that it's inappropriate to be pushing academics at such a young age. And so kids these days have more anxiety, they have more depression, they have more stress, and they don't have the brain development, the skills, the support they need in order to release that pressure valve. So while it may seem cool to self-harm, it could also be that a lot of people are beginning, a lot of children or teens, well, unfortunately, children and teens are beginning to see that these forms of self-harm are creating a release valve for them. And it's not a release valve that is sustainable in a healthy mind-body sustaining way. but they're going to it and they're doing it. And do they think that maybe they're cool because they're all doing that? Yes. But are they also getting something out of it? They might be, you know? And so opening that conversation with the teen is about saying things like, what is that like for you? You know, what is it like to know that your friends are doing this? And if you're thinking about doing this, what does that feel like? You know, it's that, yes, as a parent, we're going to be like, what the bleep, right? Whew, look at that. Oh, I stopped myself. So we're going to have that fear and it's going to land here. And you might have to be like, you know, this is heavy, you know, and you might have some feelings as a parent. You will have some feelings as a parent. And it might be a body sensation, it might be an emotion, it might be a combination. And you just acknowledge it. And then you say, you know, what is this like for you? And you get curious and you want to understand what it's like for them, because we don't have the answers. We can't uncool something. It's just not in our power, but we can help them unpack it by holding space for them to talk about it without us judging it or condemning it or shutting it down. And if you have to take a break, you can say, I really want to have this conversation and I need some time to process. So can we come back and talk about it after dinner or this weekend or whenever you think you might have time? That's what comes up for me, Shonnie. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I think, and I see it in the comments a little bit here too. I think what you said is all definitely valid and right on point. The other thing I think is really valuable for us, again, as adults modeling, is how do we deal with our emotions? Because we know that part of self-harm for many people is they get a sensation, they get a physical sensation that they can feel, and that is that there's some release and relief from that, right? And so we can imagine, right, if we had all these emotions for ourselves and they're bunched up, we know we do behaviors too, right? So whether that means we eat unconsciously or we drink more than is good for us, or we doom scroll, you know, so we have all sorts of ways, healthy and not healthy, as well, for dealing with our feelings. So I think it's incredibly important not to judge ourselves, as Amy and I have said, to notice though, are we showing our kids all range of our emotions, not in a way that's harmful? That doesn't mean, you know, when we're angry, we scream at our kids, but it's okay to say, I am so angry right now. I need I need to go somewhere because I don't want to yell. I don't want to do something I regret. But if they never think we're angry, that was the model I grew up with, except I had a parent who then would explode with anger, and it would always seem like, wait, where'd that come from? But now I recognize that part of it was because she worked really hard to not ever express her anger around me. And it's like, that's not realistic. You know, humans, we have a whole gamut of emotions. With kids, I use an emotions wheel. You know, what are you feeling right now? And many of us, like, if we paused right now, I'm guessing, and this is true for me as well, sometimes it really is hard for me to identify what's the emotion I'm feeling right now, because I didn't learn it as a kid. And I only learned, like, you know, happy or sad, good and bad, which good and bad, of course, aren't emotions, but like, that's all I learned. So if we don't have an emotional vocabulary, if we don't have practice noticing, naming, feeling, honoring and appreciating all the emotions, then yeah, self-harm may be something that's like, that's the only way I can get some release. I was a compulsive nail biter, and I think that was my version of self-harm. And I, you know, bit them down to the quick. So it was very, you know, it wasn't cutting, but it was painful. And I know that I definitely had a set of emotions growing up that the stories I made, I mean, I got reinforced by parents, but you know, I had this sort of list in my head of these are not ones I can show.
Yes.
But I had them.
Yeah.
So when I have them, but I know, quote unquote, right, that I can't show them. So what am I going to do with that?
Yeah. It's those covert rules we have, and I, again, saying we're not, well, okay, so I'm just going to say this. So, a lot of times at the end of the day, a lot of parents will go, oh, it's been such a stressful day, I'm going to have a glass of wine, right? And that's fine. We can have a glass of wine, but then how else are we showing our kids and ourselves that we can do things to take care of ourselves, to offload the stress, to acknowledge that it's been a hard day and that I need some relief. And then it's about saying it out loud, right? Like, gosh, it's been such a stressful day. I'm really looking forward to paddleboarding tomorrow because I know I'm going to get out on the water and my whole body is going to relax and I can just float, or I can chat with my friends, or I can, and so like really saying why you're doing what you're doing and how it can be helpful. Or I'm feeling like you had said, I'm feeling really angry and I don't want to yell. So I'm going to go walk to the mailbox, or I'm going to go outside and sit in the grass. Like literally I go outside and sit in the grass. And so what is life-giving? What is rejuvenating? Yes. Do we have to have a glass of wine sometimes? Some of us do. But what do we do that really gives back to us in a meaningful way that we can say out loud and model for our kids? And again, we're doing it for ourselves. And when we say it out loud, we're doing it for our children, because they don't know our internal dialogue. They don't know why we're doing it. We can show and model, but we also need it to come out of our mouths. Even if we're not, we're not going, are you paying attention? Can you see what I'm doing? Right? We just go, oh. And this can be really helpful for an anxious teen too. Like, oh, I have a workshop today and I'm feeling really nervous about it because what if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or like have a booger, right? And then my next thing to say is, but I'm also really excited and I really want to do this. And like, it's okay to be uncomfortable. And if I have a booger, I'll just wipe it off and edit that portion, right? And so, like modeling the feelings we're having and how we move through them instead of like how we avoid them. Do we avoid sometimes? Yeah, but we can become more mindful of it. It can grow in our awareness.
So well said, Amy. And I think that is a really important piece, even being super specific like that. Earlier you were talking about, we might say normally, I've had a stressful day, I'm going to have a glass of wine, or I'm had a stressful day, I'm going for a run, whatever it is, right? I think there's also that value in telling some of our story. Yeah. This was from younger years, but I think it's potentially valuable here. I had an interaction with my kiddo where they were 5, no, they were 6. And I saw this, I was not with them. I was, sort of observing from a distance on a playground, saw something happen. And I remember having some big emotions of mostly of hurt and like, oh, this is not good. I got to fix this. And I got curious with them later in the car was, I noticed blah, blah, blah. So I told them what I saw. How was that? In more 6-year-old language. And they had a completely different experience of it than I did, which makes sense, of course, because they're their own person, right? But we see things through our own lens. So sometimes we forget that like what's stressful to us or what's triggering to us totally doesn't faze our kid at all. And vice versa, the thing that they're like, oh, it's so, and we're like thinking to ourselves, that's not stressful. So I think I loved your example of I have this, so getting specific rather than just this, I'm feeling stressed, sometimes naming like, what is it for us? Like I can go in front of almost any group, start talking, no problem, because that's just me. But there are other things that feel like, I have a meeting with a professor in my graduate program. Like I notice that I'm I'm feeling anxious about that, and it's showing up for me because I keep thinking, what are we going to talk about? So really, rather than, I think there's two values in it. One, by being explicit, so we start to be more concrete rather than just a general, hey, I feel stressed, which is still valuable. And then secondly, I think the other thing that is really beneficial with teens is, rather than talking to them and giving them advice, is sometimes like, don't do that, because that's where it feels like we're coercing them, right?
Yeah.
They're like, I don't need your advice. I'm 14 or I'm 17 exactly.
No.
Or I'm going to do the exact opposite, right? Whatever you tell me, I'm going to listen to it.
My mom
So
and dad says, or my
yeah.
uncle says.
So just sometimes being like, yeah, here was something I ran into. Here's what it was like for me. And I love in the chat is, one of their greatest needs is for us to listen. So I had that as a note to myself, is noticing for you if one of your tendencies is to lecture or teach. I do the teach. That's one of my, because that's part of my nature. And I'm like, oh, I have this new information. But I remember even saying to my kiddo recently, I said, do you want any of my thoughts right now? And they were like, nope. And I was like, okay. So that was a success for me, right? Pausing to go, just because they said stuff that sounds like to me, oh, this was hard and this happened and it was awful, and part of me wants to problem solve. It was that pause that you're talking about, Amy, of, let me actually ask them what they want from me. That doesn't mean I don't get a say later on if there's something I think is critical.
Right.
But in that moment, like, that's a real trust builder with teens, is to respect them and check in with them before we go, I'm going to tell you some of why I'm so smart and how I got to be this brilliant.
Drop some wisdom on you. Rolling my eyes at myself. Although I should be kind to myself, it's because I know I want to be helpful and I want to help them circumvent some pain. But yeah, I love when I'm able to do what you just said, when I'm able to go, do you want feedback from me, or do you want me to listen? What do you need? And sometimes they still just want me to know, but I can't know, Yeah. I was thinking too about the emotion piece. If emotions are harder to identify, the body sensations can be just as important. I try to sort of unpack this, especially with the adults I work with, and I also with a lot of neurodiverse folks. I talk a lot about how our bodies give us information, and if your stomach gets tight or your jaw gets tight or your neck, or you get, sweaty palms, that's just information that you're having some sort of feeling that wants to give you information, whether it's a feeling or a body sensation. It's all information in service to helping you know what you need, and what you want, or whether you need to pull back, or whether you need to take a break, whether you need a hug.
And where you're at, like, are you regulated, right? So if are we in that state of, we're needing connection, or are we needing some separation? Sometimes we really do need our space from each other to reset. But where are we at? Are we at a place where we can take in information right now, or are we really just like, nope, no bandwidth, can't do it? So yeah, I love mentioning body sensations, Amy. So thank you for reminding us of that. And I want to remind folks on time, just to be mindful of time. So if you have any other questions or any wisdom you want to share of what's been helpful, thank you for posting some ideas and resources in the chat.
Yes. And I, before I forget, I love that you said how you pause and notice bandwidth, and how you ask your kids, and then we can do that in the moment too. Like, do you have the bandwidth to have this conversation? If it's time to kind of bring up the conversation before they go to the party that night, right? But Amy said a pretty short and straightforward book about self-harm that might be insightful is called Holy Shit, My Kid is Cutting, The Complete Plan to Stop Self-Harm. And then some other DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, that can be recommended for teens that engage with self-harm. I'm not I've heard the book, but I haven't read it myself. So, but thank you, Amy, for that. I love your stories, Shonnie. It helps me feel like it's a shared space of parenting, right? That it's not in isolation, and it's not because there's something wrong with me, or, you know, it's just literally like, this is hard and we're unpacking it. And I grew up in a very my way or the highway, you do what I say because I said so home. So it's a lot of unpacking and getting curious and pausing.
Yeah, absolutely. We used some language, Amy, when we were prepping about this idea of control and you know, what language, and Bev, you talked about earlier language, like, what do I say? What do I do? Right. So one of the ones I liked that we came up was this idea of passing the torch, that there is this inherent trust that I think we want our kids to know that we have in them. And so I think each of us needs to find, or benefits from finding, where are we at? You know, each, like you said, Amy, each kiddo is different, each family is different. So from what we've shared today, it's not like this is what you should do. We wanted to really put out some ideas of tools in general, like the check-in, the pause, the vulnerability, the modeling, the asking questions rather than the telling. So all those we think are helpful, and we do get to find out, like, how can we build our confidence in our kiddos so that they can also see, when they look at us, that they see, oh, mom, dad, you know, grandma, whoever we are to that kiddo, that they see that we're appreciating and honoring the wisdom they have. Because there is, again, that piece of simply letting them know that, yeah, you're going to be with them and help them through things, and you have faith in them, I think is a big deal. Because often the relationship from adults, and this is, you know, I've been working in schools now all semester, you know, often a lot of what adults communicate, usually non-verbally, is, I don't trust you kids. You can't be trusted to do the right thing, to make the right choice. And self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Kids, well, okay, well, I guess that's true about me. So making sure we are doing in our own daily ways, reflecting to our children how much we trust them, and that, you know, we really honor the choices they're making. And even when they make the quote wrong ones, that, you know, we appreciate their willingness to keep learning and growing.
And this can be particularly hard if we weren't trusted as kids. It can feel really scary to try to trust kids, because we might also struggle to trust ourselves. Yeah. I'm aware of the time and that it is an hour in. Any last words?
I'm pausing. I'm practicing the Amy pause. Yeah, I do. I want to mention an author I really like, especially if you have female identifying teens. Lisa, excuse me, Lisa Damore, Damour. She's got a couple books. Under Pressure is one of them, and my mind just went blank. So, but she's got a couple of really good ones that I think are really good. And then we'll put another one because there's one about, I think it's the self-driven child, which talks a lot about that, passing the torch, helping our kiddos, especially as they grow, take ownership rather than us thinking, we need to steer their ship for them. So we can share that. Will we share that in the Facebook community, Amy? Is that where we'll put extra
and share
resources?
it wherever we upload this video to.
Okay, sounds great.
Um,
I'm like, I don't have the answers.
Untangled is the other one by Lisa.
Thank you. Untangled. Yes. That's my head. My brain needed that. Untangle those wires in my brain.
I was going to look it up and then I couldn't make my brain look it up. And then it just popped in there and I was like, oh, that's what it is. Yeah. Agreed. This has been lovely. A couple of things that I want to just say, like the pause is about, okay, what's going on relationally? What's going on for me? What's going on for them? What do we need? How can we collaborate? And I think that's kind of like, as we're handing over the torch, what is the scaffolding we're going to put in place as we build our own, maybe trust in ourselves from our own adolescence, and begin to trust in them. So, this is lovely.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Shonnie.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you for all of you who participated live and your comments and your questions. It always makes it richer to have some people sharing and connecting. So thank you.
It does so much. So thank you so much, everybody.